Welcome to Green Building Matters, the podcast that matters for green building professionals. Learn insight in green buildings as we interview today's experts in LEED and WELL. We'll learn from their career paths, war stories, and all things green, because green building matters. And now our host, and yes, he has every LEED and WELL credential. Here's Charlie Cichetti.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. Today, we're joined by my colleague, Jenn Mahon, who's based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Jenn's a sustainability consultant with SIG. We're going to talk a lot about green buildings, but also Jenn's out in front of the new wellness real estate movement. Jenn, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, hello.
Hey, thanks for being on. It's not, when we're recording this, too cold yet up in Minneapolis, but when I worked at Opus back in the day, their headquarters was in Minnetonka, so I spent a little time in Minneapolis. But Jenn, that's somewhere that you've called home for a long time, right?
Oh, yeah, born and raised in Minnesota, and yeah, thankfully it's still nice and hot up here. We shouldn't be getting winter, hopefully for a few more months, but you never know.
Yeah, and for those that haven't been to the great state of Minnesota, I mean, that's why there's all those lakes, right? The 10,000 lakes. So it's a really awesome spring, summer, and usually fall. Sure, the winters can be a little tough. But, Jenn, let's talk about college. Earlier, you and I were talking a little about the word sustainability is in both your bachelor's degree and in your master's degree. So tell us about your time at University of Minnesota and how sustainability first got on your radar.
Yeah, so I went to the University of Minnesota for my undergrad, and so I have a bachelor's of design in architecture and a minor in sustainable design. So about my sophomore year going there, sustainability kind of started to become more of a hot topic, and that's kind of when I started my minor program and got into it there. In the architecture program at the University of Minnesota in the College of Design, they started latching on and including more coursework around sustainability. So we had architecture and ecology was a really great class that they offered. In other ways that they've incorporated it just into the coursework, not necessarily into the course needs or anything like that. And then as I went on in my junior year, they started a master's of sustainable architecture program there as well. So the University of Minnesota is really incorporating sustainability into their programming by about my junior year. And then senior year, they kind of full-fledged it into a whole program, which was great to kind of see the evolution of that and see it grow firsthand at the university.
That's awesome. And now, obviously, we're going to talk about your time at a large construction firm in a minute, but did you want to be an architect? Did you want to get into buildings? Like, where did that inspiration come from?
Yeah, it was interesting. So when I went to the University of Minnesota, I toured the building, when I was in high school, and I met with their counselors. And I have kind of an engineer brain, but I would never want to be really an engineer because I have this artistic side too, where, I like to build things and, stuff like that. So they actually suggested architecture as kind of a middle ground. And I loved the program, the design aspect of it, and just kind of the way it shaped my thinking over time, not necessarily in how to design a building per se, but just how to look at problems and issues. Was really great to go through the program for that. It was about my middle of my sophomore year when I started my minor that I realized, I didn't necessarily want to become a licensed architect. I was volunteering a lot in firms and working closely with them. And although I love the work that they do, and I think it's very important, I started to really dive into my minor courses and really loved the sustainability aspect of it. And I liked the link too of, the architectural side and the sustainability side. There's a lot in the construction and architecture industry that needed to be fixed and still needs to be fixed to become more sustainable. So I really saw that as my avenue to go forward. Right. And that's kind of when I started to look into those master programs that have more sustainable design with an architectural focus, but a little bit more heavily into the sustainable design aspect.
Okay. And, on this podcast, we talk about careers. You studied architecture, sustainability, you worked for a large general contractor, now obviously working on the SIG team, doing a lot of green building consulting. But 2010, when you graduated from University of Minnesota, was it a tough job market then? I mean, what was the reality of construction and architecture then? And just curious because, everyone listening needs to know that obviously there was a recession there. I got laid off in late 2008. And I was just curious, what was the job market like in 2010?
Yeah, it was definitely coming back, but it was still tough. A lot of my friends that wanted to get into architectural firms, they were having a tougher time on the entry level front. I had a fairly full-time job my last year in college, and I worked there until I got a job at Mortenson. And I started I wouldn't say really low, but I started as a admin on a construction project when I was there. We were building a hotel down by the Mall of America. And I knew once I got my foot in the door that I could move up. And it was halfway through that project that, I started to get promotions outside of that. So really looking at the company that I wanted to work for and not necessarily the immediate job really helped me get just my foot in the door so that I could start working around the company and seeing kind of where I fit best.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And you got your lead green associate in May of 2010. So what inspired you to take that exam?
So one of my TAs in my class, he had gotten his lead AP right before it rolled over and then they started doing the green associate. And it's like a light bulb went off in my brain. I was like, how could he do that? He's not working. He's not a professional. Like, he's still in school. And it was like, why am I not doing that? So you just think that you have to wait till this next part in your life is starting to, do certain things when I just, studied for it. We were talking about it in one of my classes. I was taking this. It was focused on sustainable design in interiors, and they talked a lot about the ID+C certification with LEED. So I was looking into that a lot, and at the end of the class, I felt confident in that certification. So I read the Green Associate Handbook and took the test.
Nice. No,
I thought, why not?
Congrats. And now I know today you have a lot of credentials. So talk about sustainability, though, that even outside of the workplace. So as I've gotten to know you, I know you love the outdoors. So have you kind of always been sustainability minded, even in your personal life?
Yeah, I think my parents subtly raised us that way, my sisters and I. My dad is always fixing things. So it's kind of been second nature to me to fix things rather than kind of throw things away and replace them. But so I think that's kind of been ingrained for me growing up. And I've always loved the outdoors. When you live in Minnesota, you can't not go camping growing up and hiking and, go out on the lakes and everything like that. So to be able to be a part of the preservation of that is really empowering.
That's awesome. Jenn, who had some influence early in your career? Did you have any mentors?
Yeah, so early on, I would say in college, so my sophomore year, I was a part of a organization, AIAS, the American Institute of Architecture Students. And it was just a group of us within the College of Design. And then every school, around the U.S. would have their group. And then we would meet quarterly in different states. And we were in Denver one winter where we were at a conference and William McDonough actually spoke. And he spoke about climate change and how the architecture and construction industries are huge components to that cause. It was a very kind of doomsday presentation, but I think it woke us up a lot about what's really going on around us. And that kind of is what helped change my shift, into more sustainability focused career.
No, it's important to have, mentors and some are direct and some are just influencers that really, really inspire you. Well, Jenn, tell us a little bit more about Mortenson. So large and respected general contractor. They're based in Minnesota. So tell us about your time at Mortenson. I know you became an expert on some fronts, including BIM. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, I started there working on a project down at the Mall of America, and I got into 3D modeling almost right away after I started there. I had done 3D modeling in college using various programs throughout my degree. And the clients there, wanted to see their spaces. It was a hotel, so I just quick modeled up, the different hotel rooms, and that kind of got around the company. And then I kind of moved on to become a BIM modeler, building information modeling. So it was in the virtual design and construction, or VDC is what contractors use as the term. So that's kind of the department I was in. And I did a lot of flash detection to make sure that when different trades would come on site, so you'd have, your structural, architectural, MEP models, I bring them all together into one and make sure that once it's built, that everything kind of works out right and that it's not rebuilt multiple times, wasting time and products and all of that stuff. So I did that for a few years. And as I was on projects, I would always kind of be the person to fill out all of the lead. And we have a local reporting, SC 2030 is kind of the Minnesota sustainability reporting. So I started doing all the documentation for our project on that. And that kind of slowly moved me into what was then called more or less their sustainability department. So myself and another woman were working there for about a year before I left. And we did all of the, we wore a lot of hats because it was a small group in a very large company. So we helped all the project teams with their lead reporting. We had a living building project going on, some green globe, stuff like that. So we would help facilitate those and train our various project teams on the certification process. So throughout my 6 years there, I kind of morphed into different roles and a few times even made my own roles with what I saw, needed to happen in the company. So that was kind of fun that they allowed me to do that.
Yeah, no, I used to work for a hard bid general contractor. And, I just really valued that time there. It sounds like you were working for one that was very proactive to get exposure to a living building and the new wellness movement and BIM. And that's awesome. And obviously that catapulted you into joining the team at SIG. And now you work on lead for new construction and core and shell. You even got some projects in Mexico, lead for existing buildings, large skyscrapers in New York City, and doing a lot of training. And of course, you're out in front with Fitwell and Well. So fast forward to today, Jen, what's keeping you busy today?
Yeah, so we're ramping up a few Fitwell projects in San Francisco after recently submitting one in New York, which I'm really excited about. I like working on Well and Fitwell projects that deal a little bit more, with the occupant health and well-being, like you had mentioned before. I think it's a really important shift that's being made in the built industry, and I'm just excited to be a part of it and work on those projects. I'm also working on a LEED Platinum building in Las Vegas. That's really fun. They're doing some really great state-of-the-art technology there. So that's been great to work through.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And you've got lots of credentials. So part of the podcast, we like to support everyone to go get that LEED credential. You've also passed your Well AP. But talk about a couple of others, LFA and GGP, for those that aren't familiar. How about those? Tell us a little more there.
Yeah, so LFA is Living Future Accreditation. So that's with the Living Building Challenge. When I was working at Mortenson and working on the Living Building, they were pursuing the Petals certification at that project. And so I went and got my LFA and went to the Living Future Unconference and got really involved in the Living Building Challenge to just deep dive and learn as much as I could about that. It's a really cool certification that's kind of pushing boundaries and pushing LEED as well, I think, to do, with their V4 changes. I think a lot of that came from what the Living Building's doing. And then GGP, that's Green Globes Professional. So we're working on a Green Globes project right now down in Atlanta. And again, once we got a project there at Mortenson, I went through and got my Green Globes Professional accreditation to make sure that I was qualified to help out with that project and just, again, learn as much as I could about it.
Yeah, I know you're a continual learner, so it's awesome. So what are some of your proudest achievements to date?
That's a big question. I think the most recent that comes to mind immediately would be getting my Well AP. It had been so long since I'd studied for a test, and that was a really hard test. So I was happy to get that over with and get those accreditations after my name. But other than that, I'd say getting my master's while working full time is up there. Those are a busy few years, but I'm really glad I did it.
Those are both great career moves, so congratulations. For anyone listening, thinking about their Well AP, at the time of this recording, there's about 2,500 Well APs and another 3,000 people registered. So it's gaining popularity, but still can really be a differentiator. So, Jen, how about one Well AP tip? What would you suggest to someone that's studying for that tricky exam?
Oh, man, flashcards. Once I made flashcards and I divided the flashcards into sections, and then each day I practiced one section. So water was one day. That really helped to kind of break it up that way. And then, after I went through all of the sections, I was able to go back and remember stuff from before. So
nice.
It's really daunting to take it all at once. So break it up.
Good advice. All right. So this part of the podcast, I like to ask, what's the crystal ball show, Jen? What do you think? Sustainability, green buildings, where are we shifting next? What should we be reading up on, be thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, I really hope to see more well and fit well and to have that trend continue to rise. I think even more hybrid projects will start to pop up where people are doing well in LEED or fit well in LEED, multiple certifications in tandem where they can have this really high performing building from an energy standpoint where, LEED is concerned, and then also have a really high overall occupant satisfaction and comfort. I think companies are coming to terms that their employees are their best assets and doing what they can to keep them happy. And who doesn't want, clean air, beautiful views, and be able to walk to a park at work. So that's kind of what I'm hoping to see in the next few years.
And so I second that. And I think it's a different conversation, right? We've got to talk about a different ROI. It's not just saving energy and saving water and being better for the environment, and LEED's going strong. But if you're out there and you're listening and you're thinking of trying to pitch well or fit well or just overall health and wellness in your next project, it's hard to have the people conversation, but we hope it becomes easier to have the people conversation, right? Just that presenteeism, less absenteeism, just overall healthier people, reduce your health insurance premium. So I second that, and I hope it's easier to have the conversation about the people ROI sooner than later. Jen, so far in your career, or this can even be a personal gift, what's your specialty or gift? If we were to ask someone that knows you really well, what would they say is your specialty?
Well, I think you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I would say that I love learning. Even in my personal life, my husband and I bought a 1900s farmhouse about a year ago, and I'm constantly teaching myself different things to try to fix it up, how to lay tile, how to repair subfloor, stuff like that. And then, professionally, before I started at SIG, I didn't know much about well and fit well and so forth. And now a year later, I'm a fit well ambassador and well AP working on projects. So I think it's just that I'm always willing to try something new and dig deep into how it works.
I like that. Now let's unpack it, because I have 3 boys. Currently, they're 10, 7, and 5 years old. And help me understand, Jen, is that how much of that is work ethic? How much of that is curiosity? How much of that is just, you just love to learn? If you were to help me unpack that one.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's curiosity. I like to find solutions to problems. So if there's, something broken or something in our house, I like to figure out how to fix it. And I 100% attribute that to my father. He is the king of finding the weirdest stuff on the internet to fix your problems. So I think, a lot of that is just how I was raised and, wanting to fix things rather than buy it new. And I would much rather do the work myself than hire it out, even though my husband is the exact opposite person. So, yeah, I think it was just a little bit how I was raised and just needing to find, the solution to the problem. Yeah,
no, that's good. Thanks for breaking that one down. So what routines or rituals do you have? We're all busy professionals here. Some listening might be breaking into this career. Some might be making a career change. Who knows where you're at in your journey? But what routines or rituals do you have that really help you stay successful?
Yeah, I think staying successful and staying productive to me is consistency. So I start just about every day with the same, miracle morning, the 6 a.m. workout at Alchemy, which is a local CrossFit meet yoga gym. So I do that every morning, get that over with. And then, once I'm at my desk, I look at my weekly to-do list, which I drop every Friday the following week to see what goals I need to cross off that day for the, week to go by. I love checking boxes on a list. So that's kind of my go-to organization. And then early in the morning, I read through emails that came in late last night and early in the morning with projects in different time zones that's bound to happen. And then another thing that I've noticed I've been doing lately is I have different Spotify playlists depending on the task I'm working on. So for whatever reason, different music gets me through different tasks throughout the day. So those little things that kind of help me make my days a little bit more successful.
That's awesome. Great routine. And yeah, that miracle morning, CrossFit early, 6 a.m. I love it. Hey, Jen, I'm a fan of the bucket list. I've got a lot of things on my bucket list, some adventures, some other things too, experiences. What are 1 or 2 things on your bucket list, or would you put on a bucket list?
Yeah, I love a good bucket list as well. I've been lucky enough to check a lot of the stuff off my list these past few years, but I inevitably then will just keep adding to that list. And a lot of them are travel focused. So currently high on the list is hiking Machu Picchu, seeing the Great Wall of China, and canoeing Banff. It's just so beautiful up there in Canada. So those three, I would say, are kind of at the top of my list. And we've been kind of thinking about how, when that'll fit into our years, these next few years as we are planning our trips out. We just love traveling, and we're actually heading to London and Portugal in a month to check out a Chelsea game, which is on my husband's bucket list, and spending a few days on the beach in Portugal. So any way that we can travel, we love that.
Oh, those are great bucket list trips. Yeah, that's a blast. Yeah, Machu Picchu, that's on mine too. I had some buddies.
Maybe that's for work retreat. We can just do it down there.
SIG retreat. Let's do it.
Yeah.
I love it. No, I had some buddies that did that, and 4 of them got together. And it was great. So for those listening that don't have a bucket list, when I was first told about a bucket list from one of my business coaches, I said, Tim, don't you think I'm a little young for a bucket list? And that was a smart-ass thing to say. So no, the next day I sent him 10 things, and now mine's got about 110 on my bucket list. So I try to do about five a year. So if you haven't yet, write it down. What really would make you happy, would get you excited, and go after it. Jenn, let's talk about books. Do you like a good hard copy, or do you listen? So are there any books you'd recommend that maybe you've recently read or listened to?
Yeah, I'm definitely a hard copy book reader. I finally got a library card this year and now have a very long list of books in my queue ready to be reserved. But I just finished The Kite Runner, which was a very good book. It was a little bit depressing, but a very good read. And I would say my all-time favorite book is Ishmael by Daniel Quinn. I don't know if you've read that or not, but I actually had to read it in college for a course. It's just a very beautiful book that gives a really good perspective on life as a human. It's kind of about this man who is talking to a monkey, or a gorilla, I should say, the whole time. And the girl's name is Ishmael. So it ties a little bit to the Ishmael story in the Bible. It has some relation to that, but it's just a really good perspective book.
That's awesome. No, I haven't yet read that, but you're the second person to recommend it to me, so thank you. And that's what it's about. It's about sharing these best of lists. And so we'll check out Kite Runner and Ishmael. So Jenn, we talk about careers on here. You're a sustainability consultant. You've made a green building career, really had awesome experience there on the construction side, the architecture side. Any career advice, anything you wish you'd have known earlier? Any words of encouragement for anyone listening here?
Yeah, I would just say go grab coffee with someone you find interesting, someone whose job you think is really cool, or someone you meet at a networking event, which I would recommend to go to as many of those as you can, and just pick their brain on how they got there and where they want to go in their career. There's so many avenues in green building, and finding your place might be a little bit tricky, but every step will bring you closer and closer and teach you something that you'll need later on in your career. So enjoy the process and never stop learning. Things keep changing.
Yeah, no, Jenn, thanks. Thanks so much. We covered a lot in a short amount of time. And I just first wanted to say thanks for being an awesome colleague. You're a rock star out there, and I'd put you in front of any client that we have. So keep up the awesome work. And just everyone here, hopefully you enjoyed listening to Jenn's story. We'll put some links to those books and let you know how you can connect. But Jenn, thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. At gbes.com, our mission is to advance the green building movement through best-in-class education and encouragement. Remember, you can go to gbes.com/podcast for any notes and links that we mentioned in today's episode. And you can actually see the other episodes that have already been recorded with our amazing guests. Please tell your friends about this podcast. Tell your colleagues. And if you really enjoyed it, leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on next week's episode.